Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
And you're going to find out who's on the naughty and nice list in 2024.
Hello and welcome to Heirs and Spares, the show where we bring you insight and opinion into the lives of two other famous royal couples on either side of the Atlantic. I'm Kinsey Schofield, and I'll be bringing you updates on, well, who's on the naughty or nice list this year.
And I basically will be looking at the royal family and saying, right, which one of those two have had a good year or who's had a bad year? I think we know which ones have had the bad year, but we'll make sure you listen.
Yeah, this is a very special episode of Heirs and Spares, Rupert. I mean, we're donning our holiday finest to deliver the verdict on who's been positively princely and who's in need of a royal timeout. From charity triumphs to crown-worthy controversies, we're reviewing the most talked about moments of the past year. Will Prince Harry and Meghan Markle charm their way onto the nice list? Santa Claus might say there's a snowball chance in hell. There's a snowball's chance in hell there, Rupert. I mean, it's a battle of royal reputations, and by the end of this episode, the Heirs and Spares naughty or nice list will be complete. Let's let the judging commence. Who should we start with, Rupert?
Well, I think we probably, if we're looking at the whole royal family as a whole, right? I just think we have to basically say that it's been a tough old year for all the family in the UK.
Yeah.
So most of them, I think, are going to make it onto the nice list, okay, the good list. I think given the way it's ended, I think we actually have to say that the Princess of Wales has definitely, through all her trials and tribulations, has managed to rise above all the hoo-ha and the sort of speculation, the social media stuff, which has occasionally backed them into a bit of a corner, and they've had to sort of put their head above the parapet in ways that they felt comfortable with. But ultimately, you'd have to say that the Princess of Wales has, when you think this time last year, they were all gathering and they were going to we'd see them at Sandringham, and Christmas always looking a really happy time for them. But then the next week or 2 weeks would have seen their world sort of unravel from both the King and the Princess of Wales, because it was obviously during that Christmas break that both found out that they weren't 100%, and it changed everything. So it's been a very strange 2024, a very strange year for them. And it's certainly not the year that the Princess of Wales would have envisioned, even this going into the Christmas break. But I have to give her full marks for dealing with it. She's not out of the woods yet in terms of getting back to full working mode, but at least we've seen her over Christmas with the Christmas concert and various other things. And no doubt we will see her, I assume, walking to and from the church on Christmas Day, which is part of, they're always there, and people travel remarkably from all over the country to go to Sandringham to get a glimpse of the royal family, which this year will have a pretty extended look to it. But I'm sure most eyeballs, again, will inevitably be on the Princess of Wales as she brings a bit of stardust to the occasion.
I'm glad that you brought up last year when they were likely realizing that something wasn't right, something was going on, and they weren't feeling quite right, because we also have to take inventory of the fact that Endgame was everywhere. The Dutch version of Endgame leaked, where Omid Scobie alleged that the Princess of Wales and King Charles were the quote unquote royal you-know-whats. And even though we kind of had to talk about it around the clock for a week or two, I'd say that the tone was like from the get-go, there's no way. Do you agree that while we talked about it, we were also kind of like, this is the most ridiculous allegation ever? Did you feel that way?
Well, I think, it was Omid Scobie then started denying, didn't mean it, but how was it even there in the first place? And then, the translator, if I'm remembering right, said, no, I translated exactly what was in front of me. And then they had to hurriedly pull these,
I guess my point would be this wasn't just, and you and I talk about this constantly. This wasn't just physically hard on the Princess of Wales coming into November 2023. It was mentally hard on the Princess of Wales coming into November 2023, because no matter, even though if you know deep down in your heart that something's not true, and even if you have people like us defending her on television saying we don't believe this is true, it still hurts your feelings for somebody to say something that is so absolutely egregious. On top of that, these are historical individuals. So when you do make such a harsh and offensive claim about somebody so significant that is expected to be the future king, the future queen, that there has to be some element of fear, because you believe that that could go in a history book somewhere, and that's not a label that anybody wants, even no matter how many people say this is not true. You just don't even like the association.
Well, and also, I don't think the book was an overwhelming success, and I think that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah.
The book, because they just thought they knew it was going to be another sort of one-way pop at the royal family, because that's been Omid Scobie's in his way of making money. Is right. I'm working for the Sussexes, and I'm telling their side of the story. Right. There's always two sides of the coin. But you've got to level it out. And this was an easy way to have a go at the royal family, to use the racism card. Now, I would like to think that the king's role, he's never shown that he's a racist. Look, it's a British institution. It's old fashioned. It's going to have to move with the times and embrace and change. But
Look at the Prince's Trust, now the King's
yeah,
Trust. Look at all of those people he was told at the time when he started the Prince's Trust, which is now the King's Trust. This isn't very glamorous.
no,
What this is, there's nothing sexy about this at all. Are you sure you wouldn't rather just go over here and open this hospital? And it was Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales at the time, that said, no, I want to help the underprivileged. I want to know more about, I want to know more about these individuals. And you look at Idris Elba, who this year partnered with the King's Trust, and now they're working on creating new campaigns and opportunities for young people in the arts together. Idris Elba will tell anybody that puts a microphone in front of him, the Prince's Trust is why I am where I am today. It is Prince Charles, at the time now King Charles, that opened these doors for me creatively. And even, some of Meghan Markle's friends that she works with here in Hollywood were under the Prince's Trust, received grants and had mentors, and were given creative opportunities. So the facts show that that is absolutely false, and that the king has a very open heart. And I also believe that was displayed in May of 2018 when he walked Meghan Markle down the aisle, because she had alienated her father at the time.
well, and this is where you feel it must be so frustrating for the Princess of Wales. The relationship was broken down, and it's so easy to use that card, and because you're not getting on and say, well, the reason she doesn't like me is because of this, and she is, and you actually feel, no, your relationship is broken down. It's an easy situation to use because Meghan and they've fallen out, and that's where I think it's all come down to. But they don't get on, and because of some of the things she said about her family. The Princess of Wales is going to be very defensive, and I do think it is a tough gig. You can say, right, she's got everyone looking after her, but just like her late mother-in-law, the strain of being the sort of poster girl of the royal family is not easy, because every day you are expected, look, there are people to help you and dress you, to suddenly just be this vision of perfection. And it's a strain. And, I think the mental strain and then coupled with the physical illness is why I think it's been a long road back for the Princess of Wales. So ultimately, I will give her all the thumbs up, and I hope 2025 will be a year where the smile is permanently back on her face, and she is out doing what she wants to do on her terms, but she's out and about being able to be a positive influence in 2025. So she gets, I don't know whether we got sound effects or anything here, but she gets a thumbs up anyway.
What would that be? Santa Claus going, ho, ho, ho. So
Yeah, ho, ho, ho. Anyway,
there's a
up to the
stamp,
producer.
a
Yeah,
stamp, a nice list stamp. We'll
yeah,
visualize a nice list stamp.
yeah.
Yeah. Handled the year with such grace and dignity. The amount of vulnerability we saw from them, I felt was courageous, both Prince William and Catherine, but more so Catherine, who definitely put herself out there in a way that we didn't anticipate and we didn't deserve after all the harsh commentary online, whether she was off getting a Brazilian butt lift, whatever. I mean, absolute idiots on the internet. We have to take the idiots off the internet. But yeah, it was the way that she handled everything with such dignity and grace, and invited us into the recovery process while also saying, but I do need I wanted to protect my babies. So please just give me some time to deal with this and to protect my babies. And then the beautiful, I know a lot of people were critical of the produced videos that they gave us, but I really felt like they were endearing. Seeing you're also in a way giving us certain access, but continuing to protect your children by giving us something pre-produced because you know you don't want your kids in front of a camera all the time. It's organized. You're taking an afternoon out to knock this out versus having to giving people too much access to your family and to your kids and disrupting their lives. I mean, I thought it was all done very well, and I felt like it was a beautiful reflection of who they are as a family.
I think it's also it's when you can control the access to because there is a demand to see them. And that's why I do think there is something, the Sussexes, on the other hand, have gone into overprotective mode that is just beyond a joke because,
But while oversharing about other people, which
yeah.
just feels so gross.
So, in a way, yes, he wants to be protective of his children, but actually, the odd little photograph ain't going to do any harm and actually stops the need. So, actually, I think overall, the Waleses have had to they do make sure their children are seen, and we see them at various stages. And the Carol Constance the other day, and various other moments. They're not wrapped up in cotton wool and never to be seen. Yeah. We don't know, and they're allowed those moments with those public moments. Then the children are on show, and it won't be easy for those children, but they know the Waleses know they have to manage that and give in a way the public what they want, but at the same time protecting the privacy of Louis, George, and Charlotte so they can have as normal as childhood as is humanly possible.
And within that, we also saw Catherine produce her Christmas Carol concert. So still attempting to do what she can. As soon as she starts to feel better, we know she was doing some meetings for the early years project and seeing some of those new statistics and analytics that the early years project has been putting together. So, Catherine's still attempting to do good and create, yes, some change in the world throughout her illness. Let's move on to, so definitely nice list for sure. Let's move on to Prince William. Homewards UK has seen incredible growth over the last year. We saw the Earthshot Prize, another incredible group of innovators that are trying to change the world. In addition to the award ceremony, he's produced a documentary not only about Earthshot, but about his homeless pursuits. That was a two-part ITV documentary, I believe. Was it ITV or BBC? I know that Earthshot is BBC, but an Earthshot documentary he's featured in a little bit, but for the most part, he's introducing us to some of these innovators. And I love the way that he does produce this stuff around what he is doing behind the scenes, because it kind of holds him accountable. In 5 years, we can look back on these videos, we can look back on these documentaries and determine if there's been real growth in what he's doing based on some of the tangible records of what he's been producing over the last few years that exist. Naughty or nice list this year. Prince William calling this year one of the most brutal he's had in his entire life.
Well, I think it's forget the work side of it, which he would have been doing anyway, but he's had to navigate that. When you get you can everyone at Christmas you can will be thinking of loved ones they may have lost during their year and everything, but then he's had the double whammy, as we've said, of his father getting cancer and his wife getting cancer as well. So it's been a lot to navigate. But these are very well controlled documentaries. They've obviously designed to tell the story of what the Prince of Wales wants to do, and no one's going to begrudge him that. And they're very laudable projects, and the homelessness one is very ambitious, but it's at least he's been seen to be doing something. Funnily enough, for all that, I do think what he did recently in Paris was actually as significant as anything else he did during the year, as he's navigated his way through when he was sent to represent this country in a very visible way with your new president. I just retrospectively think, yes, we know he's been doing Earthshot, we know he's been doing homelessness, but this was William on the center stage, having to represent the government, representing his father, representing the British government at their behest as we enter 2025, which is going to be a very interesting year on all levels. And William was out there doing that. In many ways, I think, looking back over the year, that just might be the most significant moment of his year, and why he can see where his future lies. He's still a relatively young man, but he knows that with his father's mortality sort of shown to himself when recovering from cancer in his 70s, that he will at some stage knows that he has to step up and he needs to be prepared. And this put him very much in the front line.
So you're saying Prince William wearing biodegradable sneakers, not as important as Prince William shaking hands with President-elect Donald Trump in Paris?
Well, I've got nothing against biodegradable sneakers, and I applaud the sentiment of biodegradable sneakers. I applaud the initiative, and I know, which is interesting, given that your new president's interesting view on all things environmental, has some opinions.
But I'll change his mind. You know how I feel about the whales. I'm over here crying over fentanyl dolphins. Don't you? I'll corner Trump. I'll let him know what's going on. We've got to save the ocean.
Can I suggest maybe not with your Christmas hat on? But it's very fetching. But maybe. But it's very interesting that William, when you talk about his environmental issues and campaigning and what he's doing, has us very. But in a way, him being out there confident in his own skin, the Prince William, to dealing with Donald Trump, who's, as we all know, he's his own man. So I think from just looking back over the year, what from this time last year for Prince William this year have had a very different course than one he was anticipating. But he can say, I've somehow navigated my way through very stormy waters and have come out with probably everything intact, and actually with something in the bank afterwards.
Yeah, I do want to mention over the last few weeks, you and I've covered, specifically, it was a Daily Beast story that referenced how Prince William is really angry towards Prince Harry and unwilling to forgive. And I mean, we briefly, said, well, that's probably the last thing on his mind. But the reality is, he's had the reality is he's had a tough year. I mean, he lost his mother at a young age and has probably dealt with the fear of not ever wanting his children to have to experience something so horrible. I don't see Prince William as an angry character. I see him as a very emotional person, and I mean that in a positive way. I imagine that he was hurting for his children, hurting for his wife, and I truly believe that Prince Harry is the last thing on his mind. And I imagine when you talk about his most successful point in the year, I know you're talking about professionally, but for me, it brings me a sense of peace to imagine the moment where he's been told, hopefully standing next to Catherine, that she is cancer free. and they have a moment to breathe. And I know she's not out of the woods yet, but just that moment where you say, hey, we have something to celebrate right now, even if it's just for a second. Let's just be content with the fact that this at least one chapter is closed for now.
Well, the family bit is incredibly important. We know at this time of year, families will have all many thousands of families would have gone through exactly the same and will be experiencing exactly the same emotions. But obviously, for William, there is a public and there's a private side. But on the private side, yes, he will be wanting to make sure, he loses his mother in his early teenage years, and obviously that is devastating, and he wouldn't want anything similar to happen to his three young children. But hopefully, when they gather around the beautifully cooked turkey with the Brussels sprouts and other such all the trimmings, that they will have a moment of reflection and peace and goodwill to all men, and that includes probably trying, not saying, trying not to necessarily feel angry and frustrated at his brother, but actually just go, right, I've just got to actually be very, very thankful that my nearest and dearest around me, who I see every day, are maybe coming out of the woods and hopefully in a better shape coming into 2025.
And hey, okay, so I'm just going to stamp Prince William nice list, but I will be I'll be honest in the fact that, and maybe it's just because we have more details surrounding Catherine's health status. I don't think that I personally give enough attention to the fact that King Charles is currently dealing with cancer. And that is something that's very important that we should acknowledge too. How incredible to see King Charles, to see that evolution of, I'm going to be honest with you. I've got some issues that are currently happening. I want to be upfront with you about them as much as I feel comfortable. He disappeared for just such a brief amount of time before he insisted on getting back out there and shaking hands. We know what cancer treatment does to your body. It makes you more vulnerable. It makes you more vulnerable to just yucky things like a cold. But he still wanted to be out there shaking hands. We've seen him hugging people. His insistence to travel to Australia. I feel like, knowing that he is ill, because he's so persistent in being out there and working and really putting himself out there, it's easy to forget that, he's dealing with something really scary right now too. How much have you admired his work ethic throughout 2024?
I think he's taken a very pragmatic view. And look, he's been taking his doctor's advice, but he's always known that, it is so important for the monarch to be seen and out there as much as is possible. And he would have been so frustrated because, as he's still a relatively young king in the sense of his time in the job, that he wanted to hit the ground running and be out there and being visible, because he knows that's so important to make sure the country get to know him, get to understand him, what he's about. It always was going to be a hugely tough act to follow the longest ever reigning monarch in this country's history. And you take up the job in your 70s. So to get this, it must have been, a real blow to him from a mental point of view. And as the Queen says, he's not someone who likes to sit down. But I think it's been really interesting to see how he's just trying to get on with it. We don't know to the extent of how the recovery is going, but he looks as if he's relishing being out there, relishing seeing people. Going to Australia and Samoa, look, it took its toll on his wife, who comes back with pneumonia from that trip. It was a grueling week, but he was up for it. And it's good to see him still out there doing as much as he can under doctor's advice. And seeing him suddenly doorstepping some tourists who are wondering, next time I'm talking to the king. Where else would you see that? But, taking them by surprise, which, we've seen him do that when he goes wandering around Balmoral. Suddenly, we've seen documentaries of him suddenly talking to some hikers, and they suddenly walk upon the king, and they go, and he's just engages with them in as normal as way as possible. but that's his style. I think it's not been easy for him, but I think again he's had to regroup and just make sure that he is able to do the best he can with the doctors sort of hanging over him and probably the Queen next side saying "slow down, darling" or however they talk to each other. And I think again he's hopefully 2025 will find a way to continue to enjoy being the king. It's from a political point of view, but also from a personal point of view. It's he's got a lot on his plate, and people can poo-poo it and say, look, he's got everyone again looking after him. But I think again he's got to look back and say, from revealing all probably is a very positive thing because it makes people aware of the condition he's got, and I'm sure lots of people are now being thankful that he's highlighted the condition because they may have benefited and found out earlier rather than later that they may be suffering from what the king is suffering from.
Um, any low points? Because I really can't think of any. I haven't, I feel like he's done everything. Everything he's done this year, I feel like has been pretty positive. I
Well,
can't think of any missteps.
there's always the sort of people looking to dig dirt. We saw sort of, looking at the finances of the Duchy of Lancaster and the Duchy of Cornwall, spotlighting, some of the things that may, some of the financial, not difficulties, but the sort of highlighting the situation, which always puts the royal family under spotlight. But in terms of him dealing with the sort of personal issues, I'm not sure I can't think of a glaring misstep, but obviously the role of the royal family is always going to be open for debate at any time throughout history, and the king's reign now is no different. So he knows he's got to be aware of the court of public opinion, and which is so fickle this day and age with social media and everything. It changes within as the wind changes. So I think he's got to be, as he's tucking in to his beautifully cooked Sandringham turkey, I assume. I hope he is able to reflect that despite all, it's not been a bad year.
Nice list. I think we have another for the nice list. There's no
Yep.
doubt. There's no argument whatsoever when it comes to this next one. Wow. We have seen Queen Camilla completely come out of her shell this year. She was always so timid, and there have been reports that one of the reasons that she worked so well with King Charles was because she never ever ever wanted the spotlight. Whereas Princess Diana just kind of like loved some of the attention. Queen Camilla was always ready to walk X amount of paces behind King Charles, was always willing to just kind of stay away in the shadows unless her presence was necessary. And this year, her presence was really necessary. And she stepped up to the plate. We're getting to know so much more about her through some of her pursuits. I really admire the domestic violence angle that she has taken. We don't see people talk about that enough anymore. In fact, she is the only public figure that I could think of off the top of my head that does campaign against domestic violence, which is so sad, knowing how much it does affect people today still. We get so much insight into who she is with her reading list, her book clubs, her podcasts on books, the friends she keeps around her that are authors. What is your take on reflecting on Queen Camilla in 2024?
Everywhere she goes, everyone says, how much fun it is to have her around, that she just gets on with that no nonsense approach. That the Princess Royal has sort of said how much she's grown into the role and almost been surprised by how just no fuss, no bother. I've got a job to do. I am the king's wife. I am the queen of this country. I'm expected to do a lot. And actually, the domestic violence involvement in that's not an easy charity to be involved in. It's some pretty tough stuff that you have to deal with. And she's very much mindful of that and wants to really champion the work that is being done to help people who are victims to domestic violence, an absolute tragedy. And the reading, she knows how important reading is. And yes, there are passions, but also I think more importantly, where it comes is the fact that she has just said, right, I've got two members of my family in a bit of a pickle. I'm just going to have to no nonsense. I'm just going to have to pick up the reins and get on with it in a sort of no nonsense approach. And bearing in mind, she's now in the latter half of her eighth decade. Again, it's demanding on her, and it obviously has taken its toll a bit when she got pneumonia. And we know when you're in your 70s, it's quite difficult to shrug off. But I think she has grown in the infection within this country with her no nonsense approach. Of course, there will always be the Diana supporters who will say she's not my queen. But I think what we have to do is the here and now, live in the here and now, and say, thankfully, she is around as the wife of the king and helping him through, keeping him on a straight road to make sure he recovers, whilst also fulfilling some of the things she wants. And I know she's very much more appreciated, particularly behind the scenes. Whereas she's much more, doesn't want all the fuss and bother, but she knows it goes with the territory that she will attract attention, but she just gets on with it. And I think she, again, has been more than just a positive influence. She has left her mark on the royal family with her contribution this year.
Absolutely. And I love Diana. I'm a huge Diana fan, but supporting Queen Camilla today is supporting Prince William's future reign. If Camilla and Charles have a successful reign, and if they, create wonderful change and leave beautiful lasting legacies, all it does is elevate Prince William's reign. And that was Diana's ultimate objective.
I think the really important thing is, and the king knows it, I've got to leave the monarchy in a fit for purpose state for my son. And that means making sure I don't mess it up, because he's aware of his own mortality, being in his 70s, and probably accepts that he won't live probably to the same age as his mother did. So he knows that, and he's always said this, bit like, I'm a short-term tenant. I mean, I know it's a very brutal way of sort of summing it up, but it is, facts of life, So he knows that he's got to make sure it is in a strong, healthy state for the Britain of a modern day, and to make sure the monarchy still is seen to have a place. And the king is, I think, doing his very best. Yes, we see the odd demonstration of "not my king," and we saw that in Australia a bit, but they're hardly rocking the political establishment with their protests at the moment. So I think the monarchy is in a healthy place in that sense. And this year, I suppose, with the illness to the Princess of Wales and the king, has helped to focus people's mind on the significance and the part that the royal family does play in this country.
You mentioned the Queen. I just have to show off my Queen Elizabeth jumper. It says "Merry Christmas."
Okay, well,
Thank
yeah,
you.
okay. I wondered what you were doing there, Kinsey. But anyway, thank you very much. Okay, I'm very impressed.
I was 3 inches away from the naughty list, Rupert. I was 3 inches away. Yeah, all right, okay. So Queen Camilla, nice list. Let's talk about some honorable mentions. I mean, they're definitely on the naughty list. Talk to me about Edward and Sophie and how they've impressed you over the last year.
Well, there are three members of the royal family that have just, not. I think the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh have just, at one stage they were sort of always regarded as not a joke. I don't mean that, but always just a sort of side players who just were there and, just got on with it. But I tell you what, they really have done. They get on and people seem to will do a lot. And I think they can look back on a very good year just by being there.
Yeah.
And the Duchess of Edinburgh has really, Sophie does endear herself. She's got a bit like the Princess of Wales that, comes from a very, by previous royal standards, a very ordinary family, and has a media background, but actually just seems to actually know what her job is, which is to go out there and make sure, not saying putting on a show, because that's overdoing it, but actually just be there to make sure that we're out there, we're helping. And again, she's definitely got a good manner about the way she deals with, and Edward seems to benefit from that because, he does seem to be very relaxed when they do seem to be a very good couple together and know how to feed off each other and give value for money, if that's a rather cheapening way of saying it. But the royal family do have to be seen to be giving value for money. and they have definitely done that. And I'm going to give one other honourable mention to the Princess Royal, because she just is a no nonsense. And and the Princess Royal, and I have to say, last week I had the real honour, and she doesn't treat lightly, and it required a bit of work on my behalf, but she did accept a lifetime achievement award from my organisation, which I'm chairman of, which is the British Equestrian Media Association. So, and a lifetime achievement award, because she's not one who wants fuss or bother.
No.
But actually, when I look back at her involvement in the equestrian world, now you actually got to go amazing, because she was a top class eventer in her own right, European champion. Her daughter obviously became world champion later. But it wasn't just the fact that she was a very good horsewoman. And, so that, and loved riding to a very high standard in the early 70s, competed at the Montreal Olympics as well. But it was also what she did behind the scenes for equestrian sport on a global scale, keeping it seemingly relevant and just getting on with it and doing all that behind the scenes stuff, being members of the IOC and all that. And great honor to present an award to her, and because of what she's done. And, I do know, I spoke to Zara about it, her daughter, and Zara said, well, she deserves it.
Yes.
Because she just gets on with it. So I have to say, I've obviously got a soft spot for the Princess Royal because of my equestrian hat. But for someone to, for her to, you can't just say, I'm going to give an award. You do have to, she has to agree to do this. It's not just forward, but it was a real honor.
Harry and Meghan just accept them. No, she's much different than Harry and Meghan. It's actually Harry and Meghan. You say award to the left, and they're lined up before anybody else is. I don't know. Just
about 10 this year. Whereas,
just to your point, though, I think we're also forgetting. She was kicked in the head this year. And showed up days later. I mean, kicked in the head. It was a concussion. It was very scary at the time. Yeah. I've heard she doesn't even remember the incident. I mean, and within like 48 hours, she was back to work, Rupert.
She was in hospital for a bit longer than she wanted. But she wouldn't be one who would, horses. She is fully aware that horses are not straightforward beasts. I know. It's there. Accidents will happen, and there she was out in the grounds of Gatcombe, and something. No one exactly knows what happened, but clearly she was clobbered by a horse, and things can happen. I mean, I remember back in when I was little. I remember my parents were away, and I had someone was left to look after this terrible little child, but we also had ponies around. And this poor person got clobbered by a pony and hurt, and suddenly she's screaming for help. But I had to, so I know that in a horse in a field you can get hurt. And I'm 6 or 7, but there she's out with someone who knows her way around with horses. Can happen to her. So you've got to put that into context. And she would have been, it would have taken a lot. It takes a lot to knock her off her stride, because she's not one who wants any fuss, bother. I'm here to do my job. I'm here to serve my brother, who is the king of this country. So for me to be able to present an award to the Princess Royal was a huge honor for someone who spends most of his working life around in the equestrian and racing world. For her to accept it as recognition of what she's done, it was a real honor and a privilege.
I think that's 3 for the nice list. Now, you mentioned Prince George. I think that all of the Wales children are easily making the nice list this year. But
can I just say, Kinsey, we're not really finding much. We sort of know where we're going.
I think we're saving the naughty for the end.
I think we're not trying too hard, because it would be. I don't think. I mean, we can put Louis on the naughty list because he often is naughty, but but in a different way, in a charming.
Oh gosh, the cutest way possible. Yeah. Well, we saw a bit of them this year. We saw them in the video announcing Catherine's her cancer treatment was paused. We saw them at trooping where they were very well behaved. I mean, Princess Charlotte is so sassy. She knows royal protocol and she enforces royal protocol. The way she'll put her brother's hands down or the way she'll whisper, smile or wave, like she very much is the boss. She's 100% on the nice list because she knows she's checked every box. She is that person that knows exactly what it takes to get what she wants, and she's that girl.
Well, the bossy sister, you saying?
Yeah, yeah. She's
The
me. Yeah, the bossy
I,
sister.
she's the middle one. She's the bossy sister. Helping her brother. So in a way, if you look at the generational shift, we've been talking about the Princess Royal looking after the king. In a way, in a way, that's Charlotte's role. She'll be looking after her brother as he will become in time the heir to the throne. So she's always going to be at his side. So this is going to be, she's been prepared for that role. In the same hand, she's then looking at her cheeky little imp of a younger brother to keep him. So we're struggling to find anything wrong with these three. When we see them, they've done the right thing. That we couldn't really. All we know is, and the most important thing is, they can have as grounded as education as their status allows them to have, going to Lambrook school, I know, and enjoying this as much freedom as possible, because ultimately they know that freedom will be taken away from them. So they've got to make sure they have a fun, but also a childhood that enables them to cope with the stresses and strains that come their way. Because, for Louis, he's the spare, Charlotte is the spare. So they've got to work out their role within the new look royal family when they grow up and are in their 20s, what it will mean for them and how they can embark and have as normal as life as their status will allow them to have.
Yeah, I really feel like they probably will be similar to Zara, where they're ready, willing, and able whenever they're needed. But
Well,
they do have a life that they pursue beyond the palace walls. That's how I imagine it will be, because Prince William and Catherine are so normal. And I'd say the highlight of my year from a very shallow perspective was watching Prince William dancing at the Taylor Swift concert with his children, seeing the selfies posted on social media of Princess Charlotte, Prince George, and Prince William at the Taylor Swift concert. To me, that was one of the high points of the year, and showed me just how normal and fun that family can be.
yeah, well, I know, and I see Prince William going to my beloved Aston Villa, and George has gone there, and they start behaving like proper football fans. So it's very important that they do have the ability to let their hair down. Now, you mentioned Zara Tindall there. Very important as the way they, with their mother saying no titles, get on, you were Zara Phillips, and then you marry Mike Tindall. You then, what is interesting, see the way they commercialize their life. Zara has no hesitation. She's doing a deal where I know Musto and Fairfax and favor of brands, and Mike's doing his thing, podcasts, you name it. They're showing how you can, without being working members of the royal family, which they aren't, but how you can make it work for you in a very positive way. It's not easy, but you've got to have the self-confidence to do it. And Mike Tindall certainly does have that coming in, has the confidence of being a World Cup winner. But it's very interesting to see how they navigate the commercial world to ensure, they, obviously have got money behind them, but actually they make it work for them. And they are a good role model, which our friends in your neck of the woods could do well to learn by.
So that's 5 more for the nice list. Zara, yeah. Mike, George, Charlotte, Louis. Let's slide over to the naughty list and talk Harry and Meghan. Relatively.
Well, hang on. Let's just, before we go to California, we just need to get Andrew out of the system first of all.
That's true. I mean, he is going to appear on the same list. So yeah, Andrew, I'd say the very ugly headlines when it comes to the war involving Royal Lodge. Just suck it up and move into Frogmore, guy. What is so important about, other than ego, to stay in Royal Lodge? Thankfully, I mean, most of the Epstein drama has cleared up, but I still think that the negative headlines surrounding his refusal to leave Royal Lodge, they shove him in the naughty list when it
Well,
comes to
I'm
me.
afraid he's hoist by his own petard. His arrogance would allow him to do this, and it has been his Achilles heel throughout his life. His arrogance from right from a young boy, and this is, he's protecting what he's got left. And to some degree, you could probably understand that because everything's been taken away, and he probably feels, well, I've done nothing wrong, but I've had to settle a suit which cost a lot of money, and
His
never,
mom's money, his mom's money.
no one, no one's, I've never been found guilty in a court of law. So he probably doesn't understand why his life has been completely upended. But yes, I think we probably can all say, just, you know, bite the bullet, move into a nice house. We'll give you all the security you need. Yes, he's bored. Yes, he's probably sitting in front of the television all day, harumphing at it, and that he should be contributing, and the royal family could have easily needed him. But I'm afraid his his arrogance has left him on the naughty list.
It's true. Let's talk about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Professionally, kind of a dead year for them. When I brought this up to another commentator, Tessa Dunlop, and she was like, "Well, what about their royal tours?" And I thought to myself, I mean, they were just glorified vacations. What was the objective there? I mean, so you got some pretty pictures out of it, but what the hell did you do in Colombia that's saving the world? I'm confused.
Royal tours, they weren't. Let's be quite clear. So I may have to take Tessa to task on that. They, of course, were quasi royal tours. That's the whole point. It was shown.
They were glorified vacations, Rupert. Somebody
Well,
paid for them to
they
come
were,
over and take pretty pictures.
but in a sort of well, royal tours, let's be honest, are often photo opportunities.
But
So
it's like, but you were talking about this with Prince William. It's the diplomatic power. It's that soft power that they have. Harry and Meghan don't have that power
yeah,
anymore.
and
They
they
never
weren't.
did.
State visits or visits by royal families are sanctioned often by the Foreign Office and the government because of what it might mean from a political point of view. They are there as a shop window for Britain. They are not there as a shop window for Britain. They are only there as a shop window for themselves. Now, they might have been going to Colombia to highlight, Colombia was hosting a conference, so that was the guise of it. They went to Nigeria, which again is a country that's not a straightforward one by any standards, but it wasn't sanctioned. So it was definitely designed, as Meghan, I think, wasn't she looking back at her, going back to her ancestors. And so there was all sorts of, stories from that point of view. They looked all right, but actually they achieved a square root, in my opinion, of nothing. So, but this is where they want to go, which is frustrating when you think Harry could have been quite good at it if he had the real blessings and they were out there. They could have rocked the joint, but you felt
But
all a
that's
bit.
not what Meghan wanted. Meghan wanted to be on all the red carpets we've seen her on this last year,
Oh,
promoting the Square of Nothing too. Like what are you promoting? American Riviera Orchard, announced in March, has sold wait, I forgot how many jars of jam has it sold?
well, no, they were given. Her best friends were given, and she's now still got
No,
laws.
the joke is that it's zero. The joke is that it's zero
Yeah,
jars of jam have been sold since March. I mean, there's been absolutely no movement. Just they're dangling carrots in front of our head, saying it's coming in 2025. Everything they just deep hype everything. They
well,
they're their
they've got a
biggest
really,
hype machines.
they've got a really difficult year ahead of them to make sure that they've got to. Harry's got to find a way of putting the smile back in his life and regroup and just accept, that look, there's going to be all these court cases going on, and this is his mission to, on why can afford to do it. Well, can he afford to do it? I don't know. Is it who's going to pay for the legal bills? I mean, I don't know. It's all going to be expensive. You can applaud what he may be trying to do, and look, it was a wild west out there, and what was going on in the 90s. We know that there was some pretty unedifying stuff that went on, but in a way, it's all draining him because he just now looks like an angry middle-aged man, increasingly middle-aged man, now turned 40. And Meghan doesn't know what she's about. She basically seems to be a hired carpet walker at the moment.
Just we just should give her a vacuum, Rupert. At least she'd be doing something
Well,
productive if she had a
looking at some
vacuum
of the
along the
pictures,
carpet.
well, some of the PR people around there seem like they want to give her a vacuum because they want her out of there. But anyway, I don't know
But
how.
Rupert, also think about this. 2025 is when their Netflix contract expires. So there's so much. When you say 2025 is an important year for them, I mean, it truly is. They have to, I mean, hopefully they've wowed Netflix executives over the last 12 months so that they feel like there is a potentially a return on investment for another go round. And there just might not be one with only one commercial success under their belt as of now.
Yeah, and then what you've also got is, didn't they do a new deal with a podcast company? Well, I'm
Lemonada Media, yes.
not sure we've seen anything yet, not even a trailer for something. So I don't know what they're doing there. So again, they've done these, there's a new PR company working with Meghan, but it doesn't seem at the moment to be um, working well for them, because I do think the person they've signed up is not an easy person to work with, because we know that she is convinced again, a bit like Prince Andrew, that she knows all. And that is her big problem. Sometimes we've got to bow and be aware of the room. Now, this is the time for Christmas cheer and goodwill to all men. So we've got to not seem like that we're actually having an easy pop and it's an open goal to have a go at them. I wish them well, and I do hope they have a very happy Christmas, and they can just use the Christmas time to say, not always gone perfectly, but let's now just hope that 2025 gives us a chance to be a happy family, enjoy our children, and rebuild step by step. It's a long process. Say, right, it's not gone well for this year. Things are in a difficult place. Let's try and work out what do we want to be in 5 years' time? Where do we want to be in 10 years' time? How does this look for us? And that's what they've got to do. And it's a long game. It's not a short-term game. It's not about what happens here and now. It's actually saying, right, where do we want to be? He's got Invictus Games in February to look forward to in Canada. Hope that goes well, because we all know that's got a very laudable message behind it and what it's out to achieve to help servicemen and women with injuries. And it's a great opportunity for Harry to put himself out and show what he's good at and really energize that organization. And that might be the starting point for him. That's where he's got to look at. So fingers crossed that sometime, if we're still doing this in 4 or 5 years' time, and you found a new hat and I found a new shirt, that we can move them onto the nice list. But at the moment, they're still in the naughty boys, on the naughty boys step or the naughty girls step at the moment. And they're not going to be allowed out until they said their lines. And at the moment, their lines aren't the right ones.
Hey, I'm going to take this moment to embrace a nickname I've discovered that the Sussex squad has given me, and that's Karen Kinsey Schofield. I'm going to add a Scrooge at the end of that to make it, a little more festive. Karen Kinsey Schofield Scrooge. Okay. And I'm just going to patiently remind you that in 2019, around this time, Harry and Meghan did sit down and strategize. And they did say, where do we see ourselves in 5 years? And that's when they started building SussexRoyal.com. And that's when they came up with their own rules that they didn't present to the royal family. They announced to the media, and then the royal family stumbled upon through the media this outline that the Sussexes laid out, and that they didn't get the permission from the Queen or Prince Harry's father, Prince Charles at the time. So I'm just going to point out that the holiday season is actually when they typically scheme. So I think you're probably onto something. Although you were very nice in the way you were more leaning towards the manifesting. I'm leaning towards the scheming, and that's okay. I'm Karen Kinsey Schofield Scrooge. But yeah, I think that they are going to remain on the naughty list until they show any sort of empathy or compassion towards their cancer-stricken family members, as far as I'm concerned.
I think they've got to show that it's less anger, less that the 5-year plan has not worked out as it meant to. It was they got these super deals in place and suddenly money was just pouring in, but you keep people okay, they thought they might be able to rock up with something that would work. You've got to hard work, the nitty gritty, get knuckle down, and a lot of the unseen stuff is what you need to do. And if you do that, then you can find things changing in a positive direction. Just look what happened to Queen Camilla, from being seen as the villain of the wicked stepmother to someone now who's found herself in a much more revered status. But she just, no nonsense, no fuss, no bother, just put in the hard yards. The same applies to other, in other situations. You can turn it round, but the best way is put up, shut up, work hard, and then things, and just be like a lot of other people out there, working hard for their dollar or their pounds, then they will get their reward. It will not just come to you because you have a name. You actually have to make it work for you, and don't think you have a divine right. And unfortunately, at times, elements of the Sussexes think they have a divine right to be just fated the moment whatever they do is going to work. It doesn't. Life is not like that. It's tough. It's away from the confines of the comfort of the royal family and the security blanket that can bring. They didn't want. So somewhere down the line, they've got to work out and look back over their last 5 years and say, right, what's been the good bits? What have we done well? And what's not worked? And then say, right, we're going to regroup, and we're going to make sure we concentrate on what has worked well. And one of those is Invictus Games. That has worked well. And some of the other stuff might also be included in that. But that is the first and foremost from Harry's point of view. And then work out, was it really such a good idea to be so nasty about my family?
You're right. I think you've said in the past to me how part of the reason that Prince William's homeless initiative is received well is because he acknowledges a curiosity and a privilege. He says, I cannot relate. So I want to know more. And I think if Harry and Meghan would acknowledge their privilege more, that would be received better by the public. But it's a constant victimhood, perpetual victimhood that we hear from them, and they've got to shake themselves out of that. Is there anything else you'd like to say on this?
No, goodwill to all men and women. So they may be on the naughty list, but I wish them still a happy Christmas, and they enjoy themselves. And all members, it's been an interesting year from the royal family. And if we're doing this in 12 months' time, let's hope there's less drama and sort of endless soap opera elements to the year, and that the royal family can regroup and just actually freewheel it through in a nice, unrestrained way in what is a pretty turbulent world at the moment. So this has been a vodka and tonic year, and I'm certainly going to try and enjoy Christmas, and hopefully 2025 will be a cheery year for all of us. Certainly in your country, you're in for a lively time. But anyway, enjoy the ride, Kinsey.
Yeah, Jesus is the reason for the season. That's what I will say. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. If you agree with us about our naughty and nice list, disagree with us, let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, share this video with a friend. And we're so lucky and thankful that you wanted to spend your holidays with us. Rupert, that's so cool that they want to be with us on the holidays.
I am being surprised by the response to Heirs Spares. So for everybody, have a happy Christmas. Don't overcook the Brussels sprouts, though.
You are committed to the Brussels sprouts. You are so committed. Bye, everyone.